that period of time about how many total were mutilated?
You know, that's a good question. I know that there were several researchers that were plotting out, back in the 70s and early 80s, whenever a mutilation occurred, they would put a pin on a map. And at that time, there was probably 400 or 500 in southern Colorado and New Mexico. But you also have to realize that they were going on all over the country, from Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, and in the South also. And we heard also that there were mutilations in South America and even in Europe. But I don't know if they were the same type. Since I didn't investigate them, I couldn't tell you. But and they continue. I know that I helped the late Officer Gabe Valdez investigate cattle mutilations here in northern New Mexico up until about 5 or 6 years ago, up in the Taos area, the Clayton and Trinidad area. So they were continuing. So I would imagine not less than 2,000, I would imagine.
Wow. And so they're still going on?
They're still going on. I heard a story, and I don't know how accurate it was, that 15 to 17 horses were mutilated in England about 2 months ago. But I don't know what parts they were taking there.
Okay, now I have a little twisty thing, because it sounded like you were kind of poo-pooing the UFO thing. So if it's not aliens coming and doing this, and you intimated that it was the government doing it, but why would we have the same thing happening in South America or England? I mean, obviously that's not confirmed, but why would it be so widespread all over the world?
Good question. I can't answer that. I couldn't answer that. I can only say what I have seen and what I have found, and I think if we have the technology to do it here, we may be doing the same thing in other countries that we've done the same thing. Whatever they're looking for. I don't know what they're looking for, what they're monitoring. But let me give you an example of why I think it's the government. Soon after we did, we checked for the cattle experiment, the ultraviolet experiment. Within months after, our homes were being broken into, and we were finding electronic listening devices, bugs, in our homes. So if it was aliens, why would the aliens want to know what we were up to and what we were saying? And also during that time period between 1978 and 1979, there was a 40% conception rate amongst cattle in all of northern New Mexico. So, we took a 60% loss on calves. And during that same time period, there was a 500% increase in female gynecological problems on the Jicarilla Reservation and also in several communities in northern New Mexico. And we started seeing real high numbers of cancer in the region.
And that's in people, not cows.
That's in people. That's correct.
That's interesting.
And then, because these mutilations continued, my father met with Senator Harrison Schmidt and was requesting that the government do something about this. And on April 20th, 1979, we had a big meeting in Albuquerque, and at that point, they brought in the district attorney in Santa Fe, and the district attorney was charged to hire someone to investigate the cattle mutilations. And during the year between 1979 and 1980, while the investigation was going on, there was not one cattle mutilation in all of northern New Mexico or southern Colorado. And the investigator that they hired was an ex-FBI agent that had no clue what he was doing as far as working with cattle. He He was from New York City. His expertise was gun running, and didn't know which end cow ate and which end the cow pooped. So, and he never did come to the ranch and never did ask us, to question us as to, what kind of information we may have had. In fact, we keep telling folks we're still waiting for him to come and investigate. But anyway, he came out with the theory that it was the animals were dying from natural causes, and that scavengers were feeding on the animals, and that we didn't know the difference between scavenger feeding on the animals and the parts being harvested. So, but almost immediately after his report came out, we started the mutilations again. And at that point, I remember very, very, very well, and it was in June of 1981, we had 3 more mutilations, and we were out having a picnic out at the ranch one Sunday afternoon, and my youngest brother came back with this tuft of aluminum. It looked like the icicles, that you put on a Christmas tree. And came back with it, and my dad says, well, where did you find that? And he says, oh, it's scattered all over here. So we went out and looked at it, and sure enough, it was scattered all over. So we took samples and took pictures of it and had it analyzed, and turned out to be radar shaft. And we also found the number and all that. And we get a call from the Air Force and asking us where we had found it, because this stuff was top secret. And we're going, well, yeah, it was spread right over the ranch, right over an area where we had 3 cattle mutilations. And in Colorado, they found a calf with that radar shaft in the mouth. So, go figure. Then we found other things that led directly back to the Air Force. Found a high altitude temperature pressure sensor transformer at the ranch. We have no idea why they were monitoring air samples and chemical biological samples there at the ranch. Go figure. And in 1982, about 50 yards from where we had a mutilation in 1980, 81, I found a gas mask. So, everything
was an alien gas mask.
Sure, an alien gas mask.
Yeah.
And,
that's just so weird. I mean, because you said earlier that you saw like these tripod marks and, singed grass or dried up grass. Is it your opinion now that the government was trying to cover up their involvement by making it look like a UFO thing?
No, most definitely. Most definitely. Let me give you my reasons. When Officer Gabe Valdez and I were out investigating, we would spend nights, just keeping an eye on the livestock and running back and forth. One night we spotted what we called a UFO. We couldn't identify what it was. It was a ball of light that was moving very, very slow. Couldn't hear anything. And we were looking at it through binoculars. And he calls in to Colorado to have it picked up on radar. And at the moment that they started scanning in that region, I saw the cockpit lights go on and the outside lights go off, and it was a chopper. But it had lights all the way around it on the outside, making it look like it was some type of a circular object. But it was a chopper, and you could just barely hear it. It was it didn't have very much noise, but you could still barely hear it. But it was a chopper. So I personally think that what they were doing is they were marking these choppers coming in. And at first, mutilating the animals, where they found them, but later on, we noticed that they were moving the animals and putting a device on them, a chain or a strap on the legs, and then hauling them off and mutilating them and then bringing them back and dropping them. And the reason I'm saying dropping them is because there were no tracks leading to where they were dropped. Their bones were broken, back bones and leg bones. In fact, in Colorado, they found a calf on top of, a cow on top of a tree, and I guess they misjudged when they dropped it. But we started finding, finding these animals, that they were moving them and coming back with them. And a lot of people will say, well, why did they come back with them? And I think it was just, a tactic that they were using, an intimidation tactic they were using to scare us. And saying, there's nothing you can do about this. We're going to do whatever we want. Other folks would say, well, why don't they just purchase them from the ranchers or purchase them at the sales barn? Well, when you start doing that, you start thinking about, okay, you're starting to leave a paper trail. So, those are the kind of things that made me think, that it was the government or some entity within the government, and I'm not saying it might be ours or wherever it might be, but it's, in my opinion, it has something to do with the Air Force, and because everything leads back, to them.
Oh, there you are. Have any other ranchers had sightings like yours of either like glowing balls floating around or choppers in and around their properties?
Oh, most definitely. There's, you see a lot of written material on these black choppers, unmarked choppers that they see before and after cattle mutilations, and no one knows where they come from or where they're going. In the Dulce area, almost on any given night, you see strange lights moving around, and of course, that's another story. But you get into to the alleged Dulce Base that's supposedly under Mount Archuleta. And,
is that the one where they say that there's like this big garage door that looks like the side of the mountain?
That story
I don't know what to call it. Well, the hangar door just blends into the side of the mountain. All right, garage door, hangar door.
Sure. Mm-hmm. No, I know what you're saying. I'm just playing here because I spent a lot of time on that mountain looking for evidence. I worked very closely with Paul Bennewitz, who was a scientist out of Albuquerque. He did a lot of work with sensors and did a lot of contract work with Sandia and Kirtland Air Force Base. And Paul is the one that pretty much started the theory that there was an underground base there close to Dulce, and he was led to believe that aliens were at this base, and somehow or another the American government had a joint base there with the aliens, and they were doing all this crazy research, biological research with, basically creating new entities, and that they were using the cattle parts to make to clone, I guess, these half alien, half bovine species, and then all the human abductions that you heard. They were talking about women being abducted, and the ovaries had been removed, and they were basically developing hybrids between humans and aliens and other weird things. And those are the kind of things that took off. And you can do a search for Dulce Base and get about a million hits on it, with that. But what's true and what's not true, I don't know. All I can tell you is that I spent a lot of time with Paul going over a lot of his maps and pictures, and I spent a lot of time up on the mountain working with the chief of police at the time, Raleigh Tafoya, and we did find some things which led us to believe that something was going on up there back in, I would imagine, in the 50s and 60s, and if there's anything up there, it's underground. But I don't think that there's traffic going in and out unless it's air traffic. We have seen aircraft going into the sides of the mountains, and the terrain is so rough in there that it's almost impossible to hike in and hike out. Like you were saying, these garage doors that would open and close. I've never seen them, but I have seen aircraft flying into these canyons and not coming out. So there's something actually there. I did find what I think is a ventilation shaft. It was a 1 foot by about 8 foot cut in solid sandstone that went down probably several hundred feet, and you could feel that cold air coming up. And to find something like that that was cut straight down, in sandstone, that would not be natural, especially how the geology of that mountain is. You wouldn't see it, I could see, sandstone breaking, but not, vertically. I could see it horizontally,
and not square.
And not square.
And not square.
Rectangular, actually. And so, I mean, those are things. And then I did find some other, artifacts related to military, but it was, I would probably, like I said, 50s and 60s, and I would imagine that's probably when they were building it, if they were building it. Now, you have to think also, during the Cold War, we had to find some way of evacuating our scientists from Los Alamos, from Kirtland, from Sandia, and we had several other installations. We had NORAD up in Colorado, which is not too far from here. And we've had the technology of drilling tunnels since the 1940s. So I don't see it, being a possibility that we don't have a tunnel system leading out of Los Alamos to a strategic location in other areas that would not be targets if we did have, an atomic war, and be able to shuttle, these folks out into another area. And I'm thinking Dulce may be a place, maybe a hub, maybe an underground facility. I don't know. I know in other parts of the country they're starting to disclose some of these facilities that they've had, and I don't see it, as a possibility that there could be one up in Dulce because it's so secluded in that area. And then, of course, it's under Indian reservation on both the Southern Ute in Colorado and Hickory Apache in the north. And then you have Bureau of Land Management on the east side, and on the west side you've got the Carson National Forest. So, you do have a lot of federal land and Indian land which could hide a facility like this. And if it's underground, well, it's not causing any problems. So that's my take on it.
Since you have started coming forward with your observations and thoughts and investigations, have you had any weird things happen? I mean, you mentioned you found the bugs in your house, but any other weird things? I don't often have people that, I'm going to kind of put you in that little conspiracy theory category. Someone in the chat room goes, boy, this is right out of X-Files. But have you had any, like Men in Black come and visit you or any weird stuff like that happen?
Not recently, but back in the 1980s.
Not recently.
No, not recently. Back in the 1980s, and I'm going to tell you a story here that I probably haven't shared with too many people, but right before we sold the cattle in 1984, it got to the point to where we were getting break-ins at the house almost on a regular basis. Almost every time we left the house, someone would go in. They wouldn't steal valuables, but they would go through our pictures relating to this case and steal pictures. They would steal my journal. I had a day-to-day journal that I kept, which was stolen. And one day I noticed that they had stolen an old pair of tennis shoes, a T-shirt, a pair of jeans, and a butcher knife. And I got on the telephone that day, and I called several of my colleagues across the country, and I said, folks, this is it. I'm hanging it up. I'm not going to do any more research. And that was the end of that. And we sold the cattle, and I moved on to another career. And my parents still run part of the ranch. Dad still has the homestead there in Dulce, but he does not grant interviews. He doesn't want to have anything to do with any of this. I wanted to stay on the ranch and purchase the ranch for my from my relatives, from my uncles and aunts after my grandfather passed away. And because of this situation, all the losses that we took, I couldn't do it. So I, land that had been in the family for, over 150 years was lost. And I had to change careers. So it totally took me out of my, my lifestyle and what I wanted to do. And it pretty much devastated us for a while. I mean, when you lose a ranch like that, it's like you lost your parents.
Mm-hmm.
It just, you're not the same person that you were before. But, here we are 35 years later. A lot of the researchers are passing away. My good friend Gabe Valdez passed away this past August. And, Paul Bennewitz is gone. Howard Burgess is gone, and several other of the scientists that were involved in the research. And I'm thinking if the story isn't said, it's going to get lost, and people won't know the difference. Mm-hmm. It'll be lost. And the other part of it is that in the position that I'm in now, I have to be very credible in what I do, because I do work with farmers and ranchers still. And my credibility is basically, what keeps me going. And I'm nearing retirement, so, as soon as I retire, I probably will get the book out and let people know that, what our experiences were.
And they're quite the experiences. As I said at the beginning of the show, this isn't something that you looked to do. This isn't something that you sought out. This isn't something you decided to investigate initially. This is just was part of your life experience, which is very bizarre.
It is. It is. When you're growing up in a small community, you see, I used to read a lot, and I was just intrigued as to what the world looked like outside of, the little community of Dulce. And who was to know, that we would, go into a situation where it was going to be a cloak and dagger situation, for many, many years. And things would change. Your life was going to change. And we still don't know why. I'm just hoping that one day, this we'll know the answers to these secrets.
Good luck on that one. How does the rest of your family deal with this? Have they just kind of closed the door and don't want to participate, or do they have similar feelings to you? Do they think it's UFOs? Where do they kind of sit in this whole thing?
No, I think they all kind of feel the same way I do. With all the evidence that we found, and especially the intimidation tactics. And I'm just telling you just a very, very small bit of what we went through. My mother went through hell because she was singled out and intimidated You know, I call them the cowards because they were picking on those that were the weakest and intimidating them. But they don't want to have anything to do with anything anymore. They don't want to talk about it. Of course, my siblings were too young to understand what was going on at the time, and they were off in school. And since I came back, you know, to help my father with the ranch, you know, I took the brunt of it. And at this point, I've got, you know, several nephews and nieces that are very interested in these stories, and I think we owe it to them, you know, as being part of the family history, that this is what you know, what their relatives went through, and not just them, but everyone else that took these losses.
Well, and without really understanding why it was happening or who was doing it, but I think more importantly, why it was happening, it doesn't mean that this phenomena or enigma is done. You know, I mean, you said that it's still happening at, you know, a little bit, but it doesn't mean that it won't spring up as something going on in a different country, or as you suggested, there was the radioactive issue thing going on, or the thought of, you know, where they're doing similar testing somewhere else, and now all of a sudden they're having these rashes of cattle mutilations.
Or, you know, the other thing is that maybe the technology is changed. In 35 years, can you imagine technology they were using then as compared to what we have today? Maybe they don't need to be mutilating cattle anymore to be able to continue monitoring what they're